This is Showdown. Now, I spoke just a very short time ago to the Defence Minister, Stephen Smith. I started by asking him about a pretty nasty article that was written by him by a former Army general in the Sydney Morning Herald on the weekend. Let's take a look. Stephen Smith, thanks very much for joining us on Showdown.
Pleasure, Peter.
I wanted to make my first question around John Cantwell. Now, he wrote this article on the weekend in the Sydney Morning Herald. It was more than a little vicious about yourself and Joel Fitzgibbon as well. What is the basis of this? I mean, and how do you respond?
Well, when I saw it, I was surprised, I was disappointed, and frankly, I was saddened. I didn't think that it was a fair or accurate reflection of either that visit or my commitment to our troops in the field. And I made that point in the Parliament today, and Mr Fitzgibbon has also made the point that he doesn't believe he was fairly treated in that respect either. So,
Minister, I heard you make those comments in the Parliament. I guess where I'm going with this is that the genesis of what he's getting at is that he says that you don't have respect for the troops. Now, I put it to you that the way that he's written this, he clearly doesn't have respect for ministers, either yourself or Joel Fitzgibbon. Do you agree with that?
Well, certainly Joel Fitzgibbon, a former Defence Minister, and I very strongly believe that his article is not an accurate reflection of our contribution and commitment to our forces in the field, or in Joel's case, to the white paper process in 2009. I'll deal with my own circumstances. I thought it was unfair, I thought it was wrong, and I don't believe it's an accurate portrayal either of that visit or of my commitment to our forces in the field. I've been to Afghanistan on 4 occasions. No one has put these or comparable points to me in the past. But the point I also made today is, in the end, judge us by what we do, not what we say. And both the current government and myself as Defence Minister have always made sure that, in terms of kit and resources, our troops on the ground in Afghanistan have got everything they need. I think that's the real test of the government's contribution or a minister's commitment to our forces in the field. And in Afghanistan, it's everything from upgraded Bushmasters to better firepower in terms of rifles, to better armour, better camouflage, and better equipment against the roadside bombs, the IEDs.
Interestingly, though, I mean, you talk about judge you by what you do. One of the issues here seems to be that his argument is that you don't have respect for the troops. Now, whether that's true or not, you must at least be worried culturally that if someone as senior as him, presumably as respected within the Army as he is, that this attitude may well filter through if you don't sort of nip it in the bud. What can you do about it?
Well, firstly, I reject absolutely the assertion that I don't have respect for our Defence Force personnel, for our troops in the field. I accept absolutely the obligation I have as Defence Minister to pay very careful attention to our national security interests, our national security obligations, but also to our forces in the field, whether that's Afghanistan, whether it's peacekeeping or stabilisation in East Timor or in the Solomon Islands. So I take that obligation very seriously. So I reject that absolutely. Now, I don't want to, and I'm not proposing to, get into a running commentary with Major General Cantwell. He's recently retired. He made a distinguished contribution, and I'm not going to go into a blow-by-blow assessment in terms of what he's written. I simply make the point I thought it was wrong.
Sorry to interrupt, but I can understand that that's your attitude. But that said, it looks like he's only just getting started. I mean, the byline at the bottom of the article on the weekend says that he's now writing a book about his experiences, presumably in time when that comes out, or even with sort of precursors to it through the media, where this is just the beginning of the beginning rather than the beginning of the end as far as he's concerned.
Well, if he wants to write a book, it's entirely a matter for him. We live in a free society. That'll be a matter for him. But and he had wide experience in Afghanistan and other theatres, in particular Iraq. That's entirely a matter for him.
Okay.
And people will make their own judgments. I simply say I thought his characterisation of my trip was wrong and unfair. And I reject absolutely the assertion that I don't have regard for our troops in the field. In that respect, I say, don't just judge me on what I say, judge me on what I deliver in terms of equipment and resources to our troops in the field.
Now, on another matter, the ADFA Skype sex scandal. Now, I wrote about this on the weekend. I backed your judgment in terms of what you've said in relation to Commandant Kafer previously about a year ago. Now, the issue, however, is going forward. Now, he's been reinstated. You did decline to say that you had, or that he had your confidence as minister at the press conference at the time. Does he have your confidence as minister?
Well, I've made the point on a number of occasions, as has the Chief of the Defence Force overnight, that his appointment is a matter for the Chief of the Defence Force and the Vice Chief of the Defence Force. I've got absolute confidence in the Chief of the Defence Force and the Vice Chief of the Defence Force and the service chiefs to make the appointments to these positions, which is a matter for them, not a matter for me.
But is it a fair characterisation to say that you may not directly have confidence in him, but you've got confidence in those that appear to have confidence in him?
Well, it's an absolutely fair categorisation to say that I have absolute confidence in the Chief of the Defence Force, the Vice Chief and the service chiefs to make these appointments. But it's also correct to say that I stand by what I said at the time of the ADFA Skype incident, which is, I believed then and I believe now that it's an error of judgment to allow the character of the innocent victim of an alleged sexual abuse to be brought into play. Now, I make no apology for standing up for an 18-year-old member of the ADF when she was in difficult circumstances and in a vulnerable position. And I make no apology for stating that I don't resolve from what I said at the time in terms of bringing her conduct into play at a time of the height of the ADFA Skype incident.
And I agree with you about that. Something that I don't agree with you about, however, was your decision to launch Karen Middleton's book, The Unwinnable War, about Afghanistan. Now, I realise that people launch books that they don't always agree with all the content all the time, but it strikes me that it's just not a good look for a defence minister when we've got troops on the ground in harm's way, in the theatre of war that is being described in the book, when the title of that book is The Unwinnable War.
Well, it was actually a quote from David Petraeus, who was Commander ISAF, Commander of the International Security Assistance Force in Afghanistan. He played a comparable role in Iraq, and now, of course, he is the Director of the CIA. So it was a quote from him. And I made some remarks at the time that I thought Karen Middleton's book was a substantial contribution to the history of our involvement in Afghanistan. So I wasn't in any way thrown off by the title. If you go to the book, you'll see the precise quote from General Petraeus.
And Minister, it is a good book. I mean, let me make that point. I mean, I've had a good read of it myself, and it is a good book, and it's far more nuanced than just that simple title. But I guess I'm just wondering, in the optics of politics, it's just one of those things where troops considering the title of the book and you launching it, and it is troops that have raised this with me, that they have concerns about this. They just don't think it's a good look. I wonder whether that is part of this issue about members of the Defence Force taking umbrage with yourself in some respect.
Well, I don't believe so. If you read the quote from General Petraeus, you see the context. There's that old adage: don't judge a book by its cover. Well, don't judge this book by its title. Nor can you ascribe to me or ascribe to the government our commitment to seeing the mission through in Afghanistan because of the title of a book. To me, there was no reason to be scared from what was a thoughtful contribution to our history in Afghanistan. But I also made the point then, as I do now, that we don't want to be in Afghanistan forever. We believe we're making progress in terms of transitioning to Afghan-led security responsibility. We'll get there by 2014, indeed, if not earlier. We think we'll be in the so-called third tranche of transition so far as Orange Province is concerned. That should occur in the course of the middle of this year or the second half of this year. So we're on track. We can't be there forever. We don't want to be there forever. But if we don't see the mission through, then we run the risk of Afghanistan, the Afghanistan-Pakistan border area, again becoming a breeding ground for international terrorists.
All right, Defence Minister Stephen Smith, we'll let you go. We appreciate you joining us on Showdown. Thanks for your company.
Thanks, Peter. Thanks very much.